Today we're going to cover the best comps in TFT for patch 15.1b. There was a big patch recently, and honestly, a lot of things have moved around, and the meta's actually developed quite a bit since the first couple of days of the B patch. So I've been making tier lists for over 5 years now, and this is the longest player run tier list, but in the S tier, right now we have Crystal Gambit at the top. This comp is very strong, but obviously highly situational because you need to hit 7 Crystal Gambit, but when you do, it's just a win out. Doesn't really matter what you do. Sorcerer, probably the best default comp right now, and because they build AP items, Battle Academia Yuumi, also strong on its own, but because you can flex the jeweled gauntlet between Sorcerer and Battle Academia, it's also going to be in the S tiers right now. These two are going to be your bread and butter comps. You're going to see at least one player going for both of these every single game, and you probably should too. In the A tier, we have All Out Cassante, a bit of a situational comp, but obviously very strong. Kayle Reroll, another situational comp, and then Gnar and Jhin. Gnar is one of my favorite comps right now. You just play Gnar, use him to fast 9, and then move the items from him over onto legendary units later, such as Varus, Twist of Fate, Zyra, things like that. And Mundo is just the best tank in the game right now at a 2 cost. Well, maybe not in the game, but best bang for your buck for sure. Jhin is going to be another good reroll comp, and we'll be covering how to play every single one of these team compositions, along with items, power-ups, things like that. In the B tier is still pretty solid. We have some verticals. We have Star Guardian, we have Crew Reroll, Mentor Flex, Soul Fighter, Smolder plus tanks, Juggernaut Ashe, Sniper, Duelist, and Katarina Reroll. These are all viable comps. They're just not as consistent as the S and A tiers, but still very good to play. There's probably going to be 4 of these players in this tier in every single one of your games. For example, like Smolder, it's good, but it's just situational. If you get artifact items, Duelist is really good. So they just depend on some certain condition that's a bit harder to get than the S and A tiers. C tier, probably shouldn't play these, but if you want, they are going to be there. But let's get on into the tier list. So starting up at the S tier, we have Crystal Gambit. So 7 Crystal Gambit, it's a little tricky to get because you absolutely need Crystal Gambit emblem, and then you need to hit Zyra later on. Once you get there though, the buff you get from Crystal Gambit is absolutely bonkers busted because you get more rewards and you get a lot of health and damage amplification from a trait that honestly it just gives you so much loot that it doesn't even matter. One trick to playing this though is that you do want to get a big Crystal Gambit cash out in the early to mid game, but during stage 2, remember, there are 5 PvP fights during that time, and you don't actually need to lose all of them. For the first 4 rounds you play Crystal Gambit, you could actually win those rounds and preserve HP and then double down later on. Obviously, your cash out is not going to be as big, but it does make for safer gameplay. So you don't need to full open or anything like that. In the very first rounds of stage 2, you can win. Sometimes people even play Crystal Gambit only on stage 2-3. That way you play 4 rounds and then you double down after the PvP round in stage 3-1. And then you have 4 more fights and then you cash out right before stage 4, which is a pretty good timing because then you see your loot rewards right before the neutral rounds and then you get to pivot into whatever comp you want to. But obviously you could play Crystal Gambit for the cash out, or you could just play 7 if you get the emblem. And your main carries are just going to be the Crystal Gambit units plus whoever you get the emblem on. Obviously, legendaries are going to use it the best. Braum is a very good candidate, but Lee Sin can use it too. And honestly, whoever you get in the mid game, just put it on them. They'll be doing just fine. Ashe and Zyra going to be the main item holders. Ashe is just getting the Rageblade Kraken Slayer combo. Any third item doesn't matter. Zyra just needs some form of AP and mana regen. And then for tank, Swain, just any tank items will do. By the way, for every single team comp, make sure you have anti-heal. Either a Morello on Zyra, Red Buff Ashe, Sunfire Swain, any of those work. And then some resistance penetration is going to be good for you too. So power-ups for Ashe, Kahuna Huna is definitely by far the best, no doubt about it. Zyra, just anything that helps her cast a bit better, gonna be fine. And then for your legendary that you have the Crystal Gambit emblem on, you literally can do anything on them. It depends who you pick, right? But for this comp, you want to do a fast 8 or 9. Definitely want to be double downing. And then you could choose whether you stay with this comp or go into something else. The issue is it doesn't come up that often because you need a lot going for it. Next comp up, we have the 6 Sorcerer comp. If you're not playing Sorcerers, you're doing something wrong. So this is how you play it. You have Karma main carry, Shojin, Jeweled Gauntlet, Guardbreaker, very classic combo. And then for Gwen, since she hits so many units, getting Morello and Void Staff is really good on her. And then third item, just a defensive item like Edge and Knight. But pretty much for any AP comp, your core items are going to be Jeweled Gauntlet, Guardbreaker, Void Staff, and Morello. So you can see here the item components needed are 2 gloves, 2 belts, 2 rods, a tear, and a bow. Those are the items that you should be prioritizing on Carousel because these core items work in pretty much every single ability power team team composition out there right now. So if you focus on that in the early game, you could easily play Sorcerers or pivot into the Yuumi comp, which we'll get into in just a bit. Jarvan is going to be a secondary tank with a Protector's Vow, Swain going to be main tank. Any good tank items are going to work on Swain. Honestly, your front line does not last very long, so if you do get Gwen and Karma, just give them the fruits, and they'll be doing a lot of carrying. You do want to fit in Mighty Mech, because again, this team does lack tanks. Also, Karma and Lucian are both Sorcerer and Mighty Mech, so whenever you have double trait sharing units, you always want to play around both of them at least a little bit, so that's why you add in Jarvan. He's also a good strategist, and then Ryze can be added in for the Mentor effect, which gives some mana regen to your team. In the early to mid game, you want to prioritize playing around Lucian and Ahri. Lucian is great in the early game, especially with the bullet time power-up where you get more projectiles, and then Ahri, just a solid item holder. 3 cost is better than 1 cost, so that's why you switch over to her. And then once you get Karma, she's going to be blowing up a lot of things. So what power-ups do you want on Karma? Well, Efficient and Mage are going to be the 2 best ones. Kenai is a close follow-up, and then Shadow Clone, honestly, very, very good, because you get a clone of your Karma, which does 25% of the damage, but it enables the Sorcerer effect to be triggered an additional time. So essentially, whenever a Sorcerer deals damage to a unit that ends up dying, they end up doing a bunch of damage to other units. So having an extra Sorcerer triggers that an extra time, which is obviously very welcome. For Gwen, which you only want to power up when you have 3 items for her, Hemorrhage is pretty good, and then Needlework is obviously nice as well. The other ones, not too great, but anything will do. Swain, round 2 is probably his best tank trait, because he's not that tanky himself, because he's a 3 cost unit, and oftentimes you don't have enough gold to get him to 3-star. And then Selfish is just generically good, and then Standalone is nice in this comp because you don't have too many frontline units, so it's easy to get standalone value. You want to do a fast 8 or 9 for this comp. Obviously win streak's preferred, but you could play this from a lose streak or even a mixed streak if you have an econ augment. Just make sure that you have enough gold to get to Karma, or if the comp's not too contested, then you could go for this if you're a bit poorer. By the way, if you want to get a full write-up on each and every one of these comps, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol. There's a lot more detail into this website right now. I think it's actually the most detailed it's ever been. Next comp up we have is Battle Academia. So playing around 5 Prodigy, 5 Battle Academia is going to be a very classic combo. The best part about this build is that you don't need mana items because Prodigy gives you a lot of mana. So again, we have the same combo of Jeweled Gauntlet, Guardbreaker, Morello, and Void Staff. And then we combine it with any 3rd item for your main carry, and then just tank items after that. So the reason why people build Protector's Vow and Spirit Visage on Leona very often is because Tears are ironically useless in this comp. You really only need it for Void Staff, and that's about it. So using Tears to build tank items, very welcome, because you don't have that much of a use for them later on. Speaking of Tears and mana items, one big rookie mistake that people make when playing this comp is because you run 5 Prodigy, a lot of people take Prodigy Crown, which is one of the prismatic augments, and I think this is actually something that you don't actually want in this comp, because Prodigy Crown gives you a Spear of Shojin, which doesn't really help you at all, because Spear of Shojin is pretty much a useless item. It's like the worst item you could ever build in this comp, apart from like a Deathblade. So don't fall for that trap of taking that, because normally a prismatic trait should give you an emblem, an item, and a unit, and because this item is so worthless in this build, you're pretty much down an item. So how bad is it? Let's filter for Emerald Plus and go to 5 Prodigy and type in Yuumi items. Let's see who can use the Spear of Shojin the best. So averaging a 3.63, which is very high, but you have to keep in mind the average placement of the overall dataset is 4.27. But if we look at Yuumi, we are going to see Spear of Shojin bump this up to 3.83. Compare that to every other item that's built more often than this, and you can see that it's pretty bad. Keep in mind, the only time people have Spear of Shojin is when they take Prodigy Emblem. They're not building it on their own volition. So it just goes to show how bad this item actually is. In fact, you could see all the mana items such as Adaptive Helm and Blue Buff all perform a bit worse compared to the pure AP or damage ones, or lifesteal ones such as Jeweled Gauntlet, Hextech Gunblade, Guardbreaker, Rabadons, and Archangels. But for utility items, drop them on your Malzahar, you're going to be good to go from there. And if you ever get a lot of attack damage items or some random items that you need to throw on someone else, Cassante is a pretty good holder for those items. So he could use Thieves' Gloves, he could use more tank items, he could use a little bit of attack damage items. Whatever leftover items you have, put it on Cassante. And by the way, another big bait in this comp is going to be itemizing Seraphine. Seraphine's just one of the worst legendaries right now unless she's played in Star Guardians, and since you are not Star Guardian in this comp, she's kind of useless. Do not put Morello on her because she's just not that impactful with it compared to Malzahar. But I guess if you have 50 items in your game for some reason, then yeah, sure, put them on her if you have no one else to put them on. But prioritize Yuumi and Leona, then utility on Malzahar, and then K'Sante. Honestly, even Ezreal might be killing more units than Seraphine. I've not done the actual math, but Seraphine is pretty low impact considering she's a legendary for this trait. Next comp up we have is going to be the A tiers. So All Out K'Sante is a very, very strong comp. It does require the All Out power up. So save all your removers to fish for this power up because it is just that strong. If you get one econ augment and one item augment, it's pretty solid because you do end up itemizing a lot of different people. You have Jarvan, Akali, and K'Sante, and then you also run some random legendaries because this is just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 person comp. But when you go level 9, you could fit in Twist of Fate, you could fit in Zyra, or if you get some weird emblem, you could do some really crazy things. So item augments are pretty good in this comp. And lastly, you need a lot of gloves. Guardbreaker is one of the best items for Akali. You want Hand of Justice to get some healing. Infinity Edge is mandatory on K'Sante, and Guardbreaker is also good on him too. So get a lot of gloves in the early game. You can see in this little summary on the right here, 4 gloves, 3 belts, and then 2s of everything else. What you do not need is bow. If you do get bows, build a red buff because that's the way to get anti-heal in this comp, and worst case, make something like a Giant Slayer. So ironically enough, even though the comp's called All Out K'Sante, do not underestimate Akali. She's actually like a giga carry, and sometimes I even see her out DPSing my K'Sante. Doesn't happen all the time, but does happen often enough for me to point it out. You don't really need to itemize Ryze that much. He's just there to give you Mentor and Executioner, and also Strategist because you're playing Jarvan and Janna. By the way, to get the Strategist buff, you need to be putting your Akali and K'Sante in the back 2 rows. That way they get damage amp instead of the shield from a Strategist. But since Akali jumps around so much, it doesn't really matter where you put her that much, because she literally goes all over the map. One thing to note about this comp is that you really only want to play this comp when you are ahead, so K'Sante is so contested, so you can't really rely on getting him 2-star that early unless you have a ton of gold, or if you get lucky, or have a huge health lead. So one thing to do with this comp is play around Gangplank in the early game. He holds both Akali and K'Sante items really well, like Edge and Knight, Infinity Edge, Guardbreaker, Hand of Justice. They're all really good on Gangplank, and Gangplank can farm you infinite gold. So a lot of times I see people, they play Gangplank early, and then they're like, oh, I'm getting Gangplank. Let me reroll Gangplank. Nope, you don't have to do that. You could go into some of the more expensive comps. This comp is decently expensive because it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 cost. And getting 2-star Akali and K'Sante is a world of a difference. You know how some 4 costs you could get away with them being 1-star? In this comp, not so much because they either kill everything or kill nothing. So you're either dealing 15 damage to everyone during stage 4 and 5 or taking 15. So it's not a good situation. That's the difference between 1 and 2-star. Literally 30 HP swings every single fight. For Akali, just buff up her damage with the power-ups. Either Hemorrhage or Dark Amulet, probably going to be the best 2 to go for. But if you don't get the exact good ones on Akali, it doesn't really matter because you're using all your rerolls to get All Out K'Sante because it's required for this comp. She's just not good without it. If you don't get it, like, tough luck, probably should go for something else instead. But yeah, for items, there are a couple of replacements you could do. Sterix Gauge, pretty nice. Giant Slayer, Deathblade, any AD works. For Akali, pretty much any AP or damage amp works. And then Jarvan, just put whatever tank items you have on him. Next build up we have is going to be Kayle Reroll. This comp's hilarious. We're going to get into the Mundo text right now. Dr. Mundo is a 2 cost. He's a Juggernaut as well. Set is a 4 cost, also a Juggernaut. Who do you itemize in this comp? It's going to be Mundo. So why is this? It's because you play Mundo up front. He's also a Luchador. And when you play him, he gets targeted first, Luchador gets procced, he drops aggro and jumps back into the fight. Meanwhile, your Juggernauts are dying, which is a good thing. And what do Juggernauts do? Okay, Juggernauts, when they die, other Juggernauts heal for 10% of their max health. So your Mundo is just getting healed up over and over and over, both from Luchador and from Juggernaut, and then for some reason he just doesn't die either. If you play Resistant on him, he literally never dies, but any of the tank power-ups will honestly do. And oftentimes I see Mundo just be the last unit living on my board every single game, no matter what comp I'm playing. We'll get into the Gnar text a little later. But Mundo's extremely powerful. You could also do Zac as your main tank. It depends if you have 3-star Zac or not. Sometimes when you play this build, you get 3-star Kayle, but you're far away from Zac, and then you're like, whatever, let's just get to level 9. Because Kayle gets much more powerful at level 9. But since this is a Kayle-focused comp and Juggernauts are such a good frontline, you don't need Zac 3, even though it is definitely nice to have. Play this comp if you have a lot of Kayles early. Maybe if you have like 5 Kayles by the time you get to stage 3-1, that's when you'll roll for her. Those are going to be the best times to go for this. The other way to go for this is if you are on a high economy or resource portal, such as Gold Subscription, Scuttle Puddle, or Crab Rave, because that way, no matter what happens, you'll have enough gold to both hit Kayle 3-star and go to level 9. So keep that in mind when you're playing this. It's a very expensive comp. Normally for reroll comps, they're generally cheaper to play, but because you need to hit level 9 to get Kayle's full power, it's a bit different. One other thing you could think about for power-ups for Kayle is that Final Form's the best. That's the one that turns her into a 4-star. Double Strike is a very good one. And then Ramping Rage is good if you don't have a Rage Blade. And then Final Ascent is a very fun one where if you get to level 10, you pretty much just win the game. But getting to level 10 is extremely difficult on Kayle. Sometimes people do it with Kayle 2-star when they get this, and then just power level, fast 10, and go from there. But there are ways to get 3-star Kayle with Final Ascent. You just need even more gold than you normally would with a high econ or resource portal. Like I took this once and I took Hedge Fund off of my first augment, and yeah, I was able to get to level 10 pretty easily. Granted, I was 1 life by the time I got there, but once you hit it, she pretty much doesn't die and she kills everything, so it doesn't really matter that much. Oh, by the way, for augments, considering that you live or die by this unit, one augment to consider that's kind of fun to play is going to be the Crown of Champions. I forget what it's called, but it's the one where you put it on Kayle, and when she dies, you lose the fight. But she's your last person standing anyways, and if she dies early, you're going to lose the fight anyway, so it's actually a pretty interesting augment to use on her. But apart from that, for items, Rageblade, Jeweled Gauntlet, Guardbreaker. Can't really go wrong with that combo. Striker's Flail or Guardbreaker is just the best item in the game right now because it fits in every single comp. Granted, it's not the best in slot for every character, but it's used so widely that I prioritize gloves and belts a lot on the carousel just because it complements every build. It's just like the best third item on every character. You know how I normally say like, oh, third item doesn't matter? Yeah, it doesn't matter that much, but if you were to choose a third item, it's generally going to be Striker's Flail for most of these champions. Because the first item is always a champion-specific item, whether it be like a mana regen item, whether it be like a Rage Blade on something like Kayle. Second item is an IE or Jeweled Gauntlet, depending on whether they're AP or AD. And then lastly, you get your luxury item. So think of Striker's Flail as like buying a Lamborghini. Like, you don't need it, but it's nice to have. I wouldn't know, actually. But let's get into the next comp. We have the Gnar Fast 9. Very interesting comp. It's the same setup with the stupid Dr. Mundo stuff, except he's just ridiculously strong. So one thing you do with this comp is you get Gnar 2-star early with a Mundo 1, put tank items on Mundo, put Rageblade on Gnar, and you will win streak all the way to level 9 if you hit Mundo 2-star in any reasonable fashion. We talked about that down here with the requirements, but pretty much have one component of Rageblade, get the second one off the carousel, and then you just Giga go 9. If you have Shadow Clone, that's going to be the best power-up for Gnar because you get 2 copies of Gnar, and if you know how Gnar works, you'll know that he gives a lot of attack damage to nearby allies, prioritizing attack champions. So what does that mean? It means that you essentially give someone a Deathblade if you put 2 Gnars next to someone. That's why Shadow Clone is so good. Shadow Clone is one of those power-ups where it's really good if you have a nice supportish effect. It's not good in terms of pure damage because they get damage reduced to 25%, so if you compare it to something like a random damage augment, which gives someone like, it doesn't exist, but most of them give around like 30 to 40% more effectiveness. It's definitely not as effective as that. But if you have some secondary effects, such as a support ability from Gnar, we talked about Shadow Clone on Karma Sorcerers, where you get an extra trigger of the Sorcerer buff. Those are going to be really good uses of Shadow Clone. But if you're talking about Shadow Clone on just some generic damage unit, like, no, it's not going to be that great. Like, if you Shadow Clone Varus, doesn't do anything at all. You'd rather get something else, such as 30% more attack damage, for example. But for Gnar, you give someone a Deathblade when you get Shadow Clone, so it's just really, really nice to have. Kahuna Huna is also pretty nice, and you pretty much need these for Gnar to go to Fast 9. Although I have seen people get away with worse power-ups, it's just a little bit more difficult to do. After that, just play as many Juggernauts as you can, mix in snipers with like Sivir, Jhin, things like that. And then in the late game, you want to itemize Varus, Zyra, or Twist of Fate. Twist of Fate is probably the worst of the 3 options. Varus is definitely going to be the best one. He just one-taps entire boards oftentimes. And I do want to make a note, Rageblade is not his best item, but you need Rageblade on Gnar to Fast 9. So for all the nerds out there who are like, oh, Rageblade's not good on, like, yeah, we all know Rageblade's not good on Varus, but you need it on your Gnar in order to Fast 9. Because what would you rather have? Varus 1-star with perfect items, or Varus 2-star with a Rage Blade. I'd take Varus 2-star any day of the week. But that's also another thing you could do with the Rage Blade. You could play Twist of Fate with it, and Twist of Fate's obviously very good with that item. So it's decently flexible. Some people also go into Ashe. If you have no money and are broke, going Ashe is a very good replacement for Varus because you can use the Rage Blade, and Ashe is a 4 cost. You don't need to go level 9, and you can use the same Juggernaut frontline. If you haven't noticed yet, Juggernauts are pretty strong. Probably the best frontline in the game right now. And yeah, abuse it while you can because this Mundo unit is going to get nerfed most likely. And if he doesn't, then we're just going to keep playing him. But there's a pretty long write-up that we have here, so definitely check that out on the website. Tells you exactly what to do because this comp is a little bit more difficult than I'm making it sound because any Fast 9 comp, they generally take a bit more skill unless you just hit everything 2-star, but obviously if you hit everything 2-star, you don't need any guide at all. But a lot of this goes over what to do in every other situation. Next build up we have is going to be Jhin Reroll. Jhin Reroll is very fun to play. It's another Juggernaut frontline type of build, and it also revolves around Rage Blade. So you could do the Gnar Mundo bullcrap that we talked about before, but you can also put Rage Blades on Jhin. Double Rage Blade Jhin is absolutely bonkers busted because he just gets so much attack damage because Rage Blade gives attack speed, but Jhin converts attack speed to attack damage. So you just pretend you have like 2 Archangels on him, right? Like Archangels, it kind of just gives you ability power every couple seconds. Rageblade is just going to be giving a lot of attack damage every couple seconds to Jhin, and that's exactly the type of stat that he needs. He doesn't need his ability to critically strike, so you don't need an Infinity Edge on him. So you could just build some damage amp item on him, such as Giant Slayer, and pretty much call it a day after that. Maybe even triple Rageblade works on Jhin. It probably does, but damage amp is also pretty good. You do the same cheese with Mundo on the front line where he procs the Luchador, all your other Juggernauts get targeted, and then he is just super tanky after that because he gets healed up a ton. Jhin also really needs the power-up Artistic KO. I wouldn't really play him without this. What you can do is just reroll your augment a ton and then eventually get Artistic KO and then go for it. Jhin's also has the benefit of being uncontested. No one's really playing snipers or wraiths that often where they need Jhin. So hitting Jhin 3-star is very easy. On the flip side, getting Mundo 3-star, very difficult to do because a lot of players are playing Juggernaut. The good news is that you don't need Mundo 3-star because Mundo 2-star is tankier than 2-star Set, and Set is a 4 cost, Mundo is a 2 cost. So while it's nice to have Mundo 3, it's not absolutely mandatory by any means. In the late game, definitely add in stuff like Varus. He gives both Wraith and Sniper, so he's a natural legendary to kind of tech in, but you don't really need to worry about that until the super late game. But let's move on into the next comp, which is going to be the B tier. So B tiers, I'm changing kind of like the grading scale right now. Before, I had a lot of B tier comps in the A tier because they are viable, but I kind of want to like make a distinction between like the previously A- comps. I'm going to move them down to B tier starting this set. I'm not 1000% sure what approach to use because some people, when they see B tier, they just think it's automatically bad, but that's just not the case. Because if you get a Star Guardian emblem to start the game, or if you get Ahri to start the game, like Star Guardians are going to be really good. They're going to be an A or even S tier comp. But unless you meet those conditions or like something weird happens, like yeah, the comp's not going to be as good as the other ones. Like going Battle Academia Yuumi or going Sorcerers, like you could go that every single game and do really well. You cannot do the same thing with Star Guardians up to a certain level. But that doesn't mean Star Guardians are bad. Like they win tons of games. A lot of the B tier comps win tons of games, and if you hit that comp, like you play it, you know? So I don't know the best approach to this. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Should I move all these like very playable comps and have them in like the secret A- tier like we did before, or should we separate them out to B tier? Because there's a big difference between being technically correct and being helpful. So I tried to prioritize being helpful, which is why I used the approach before, but it's kind of up for debate, right? But Star Guardians are pretty good. You play around Ahri for AP items, play around Jinx for AD items, Poppy as main tank. Poppy is probably the best individual tank unit in the game right now. So unfortunately, like you could really only play her in Star Guardians because heavyweights are kind of a fake trait in this patch, but in future patches, it'll definitely change. I'm actually scared of patches where heavyweights are as strong as Juggernauts right now because Poppy is so much better than Set in terms of like actual tankiness. So yeah, she's going to be unkillable in future patches, but right now she's still very good. For spatula holders, like I definitely recommend playing with Star Guardian emblem and putting it on any legendary units will do, but one random unit that they play a lot is Kabuko because Kabuko is a heavyweight unit and it also gives you Mentor, so very popular unit to put in. And if you haven't noticed yet, this comp is pretty cheap. It's pretty affordable. You run Rel, Kabuko, Syndra, and Xayah as 1 and 2 costs. So if you're a bit poor, you can definitely hit this comp. So if you get Star Guardian emblem early on in the game, and if you watch my TFT fundamentals video, you'll know that in the early game, you want to either win streak or lose streak. But when you fast 8, you generally want to be win streaking. However, when you take an emblem, you're not going to be win streaking that easily unless you have all 2 stars, which isn't always the case. So you're probably going to end up doing a win-lose like you see here. The good thing about this is that with Star Guardians, the comp is cheap, so you don't need as much gold as, let's say, the Cassante board. Like this team comp, we have 2 4 costs and 1 legendary. And if we compare that to Cassante, they have 4 4 costs and 1 legendary. Like it's much more expensive to play, even compared to the Battle Academia Yuumi comp. This one has 3 4 costs and a legendary, but typically vertical comps are pretty cheap. So that's one advantage to this. Like it's okay to have a mixed streak because whenever you play verticals, that typically happens. But obviously, you still need to stabilize at level 8 with Poppy and Jinx. But if one of them's 1 star, you know, not the end of the world. Also, the late game cap of Seraphine or RE3 is very nice. Seraphine is actually useful in Star Guardian because she gets all the stats of the Star Guardians based on her Star Guardian buff. So just a mana item, you could do anti-heal if you want. Some people mainly put anti-heal on either her or Jinx. If you have 3 Jinx items, because she mainly uses attack damage items, like you have to keep them on her. So oftentimes you might run out of room for red buff on her. So if that does happen to you, put them on Seraphine. But any AP item works on her. Mana regen is very nice, and she does end up nuking a lot of boards. Next build up we have is going to be the Crew Reroll. Very strong comp if you get a lot of Sivers and Malphites early. What you want to do is do the 1 cost reroll, but it's a bit different because the way it works is when you press reroll after you get 1 3-star unit, you gain 1 XP every reroll. So you end up not needing to press the level up button that often. But the one caveat is that you definitely need all 4 of your units 3-star. So you need Sivir, Malphite, Shen, and Ziggs all 3-star. If not, you can't really play the game. But when you hit it, you're going to win pretty much every round. Like maybe like, I don't know, 75% of the boards during like stage 5. You're going to be beating those pretty easily if you have all of them 3-starred. So it's really only the Giga High Rollers that can beat you there. For Malphite, you want pure tank items on him. Warmogs, Spirit Visage, and obviously Gargoyle Stoneplate can be the most important one because you are wanting to be doing a solo frontline with him. If you get the standalone power up, it's very good on him. For Sivir, Precision is probably going to be the best, then Sky Piercer if you don't have Armor Shred. And Sky Piercer is good in general because Ziggs does magic damage, Sivir does attack damage, Twisted Fate does a bit of both. So getting Sky Piercer is very good because it gives you both types of piercing, which is really good in mixed damage teams. But one key discussion people have when playing Crew Reroll is after you hit your first 3-star 1 cost, what do you do after that? Do you press the level up button or do you press the roll button to level up a bit more slowly but still getting rolls? So what I like to do is after I hit my 3-star 1 cost, I level up manually to level 6. And then once I hit level 6, I only roll until I hit level 7. I do not press the level up button after that because you just get so much value from pressing the roll button. You get 1 XP and you get decent rolling odds because you need 2 costs and 3 costs. So when you roll at level 6, you have a pretty high chance to get whoever you do not have yet of Malphite and Sivir. And you also get a pretty solid chance of getting Ziggs. So if you combine all that with the +1 XP gain that you get from rerolling, it ends up being a ton of value. So if you spend 4 gold on pressing the level up button, you end up wasting a lot of it because you could have been leveling up at a discount instead. Unless you have Malphite 3-star, Sivir 3-star, and Shen 3-star really early without many copies of Ziggs, I would just stay level 6 and roll until you hit level 7 through that method, rather than power leveling to level 7 and then rolling for Ziggs there. Obviously, at level 6, the 1 cost reroll odds for Malphite and Sivir don't change. They're the same no matter what level you are. But again, it's just a much more efficient use of gold if you just use your rerolls instead of leveling up directly. But pretty simple build, very easy to play, and also very strong if you manage to hit everything. Next build up we have is Mentor Flex. Mentor Flex is still solid, just a bit worse than it was before. Like Mentor is definitely still good, Rise is still solid, but they're just a bit better boards to play. Jarvan's going to be main tank, Rise main damage dealer, but we talked about this comp a lot in the previous video, so I will be skipping over this because it is a little bit past its prime. Next one up we have is Soul Fighter. Soul Fighter, you just want to play this if you get, I think it's called Tournament Favorites is the augment. It's the one where if you reach a new high score based on what damage they do, you get a bunch of loot. It's very nice because you get a lot of the Soul Fighter units when you play that way. So you pretty much always hit your 8 Soul Fighter comp and get them 2-star very easily. When playing this build, Samira and Set are obviously the most consistent carries, but Gwen is going to be the most powerful one. And contrary to the Sorcerer build where you build more utility on Gwen, I like building more damage-oriented builds on Gwen when I'm in the Soul Fighter build because she is going to be doing a lot more carrying, and also she doesn't need the Void Staff effect to help your other carry because in this comp, Samira is going to be doing physical damage, but the Sorcerer comp, Karma's doing magic damage. So that's why Void Staff is really good on Gwen. She does hit every unit, which is why Morello is still very nice on her. But if you don't have that, going pure damage build is still a very, very good option. And of course, you always need a defensive item on her, such as Edge of Night. That's going to be the best one to go for. First set, just generic tank items will do. And then for your like little extra unit, because 8 Soul Fighter is 8 of your slots. So when you go level 9, like add in a Yone if Samira is carrying. You could also add in Bastion if you get Braum 2. You could also use Lee Sin because he is a Juggernaut and a Duelist. Or even Executioner. Like if you get something 2-star, just based on your items, play them, and yeah, whoever you hit is whoever you hit. You're not always going to get Yone 2-star. If you have the emblem, it makes a comp a lot easier to play because you can fit in 2 of these flex units, and you just put the Soulfire emblem on whoever you have items for. They'll be doing a lot of carrying there, but this is just another one of those vertical comps, so Little Buddy's really good, Climb the Ladder really good, the trait augments are really good, and emblems are very nice as well. Next up we have is Protector Smolder, a very interesting comp, but you only play this comp if you get an early Lulu, because each turn that Lulu is in, or whoever she monster trains, they get XP for that round, and based on however many takedowns they get. So I personally only play this if I get Smolder stacking since the neutral rounds in stage 1, but obviously that doesn't happen every game. If you happen to get a lot of Lulus in your shop, you could maybe start doing this at latest stage 2-5. But you play this comp just like any other 3-cost reroll comp where you reroll at level 7, and you can play this with either Protectors or Juggernaut. By the way, for the build on Smolder, you pretty much just need either Rageblade or Spear of Shojin, doesn't really matter which, but the other mandatory item is going to be Infinity Edge. Third item doesn't matter as much, but Hextech Gunblade, Guardbreaker, all really good options. But I just want to mention that you absolutely need a way to crit, and you absolutely need some way to get him to cast faster, either a Rageblade or a Spear of Shojin achieves that. For power-ups, he's going to love Efficient or Mage, just anything to get him to cast more. The reason why is because based on monster levels, he gets attack damage. From Infinity Edge, he gets Critical Strike. From one of his items, he gets Mana Regen. So you pretty much covered all the bases of damaging in this game, or ways to amplify damage. So the only other thing you could do is just make him cast more. And since he is an attack caster, Efficient and Mage are really, really nice on him. For your other tank, like any of the generic tank power-ups will do. Nico is going to be an obvious choice because she's a 3-cost Protector. Juggernauts is a bit different because Udyr, I don't think he's that tanky at 3-cost compared to Nico, so you can either play with Set or even Mundo as we talked about before. Cap the comp out with some random legendary units or just some complementary trait units. Rise is good because he gives the Mentor buff. Mentor is good when it gives kind of like a Spear of Shojin effect, which is what Rise gives. And you also get Strategist with the Janus, so you get a little bit of damage amp there. But yeah, just 3-cost reroll, very easy to play. In the late game, just throw in some extra trait units or random legendaries, and you could even play this with an all-out Cassante, because he does definitely work in this comp because you have all his traits, right? You have 6 Protector in there. Like, yeah, you don't have Wraith, but you could always add it in later, at level 9, for example. But he ends up just being super strong if you let him. Next build up we have is going to be Juggernaut Ashe. This is just another Juggernaut frontline plus damage in the backline. This is the poor man's Twisted Fate or poor man's Varus, where you just go Rageblade on Ashe, and she's a 4-cost, so you pretty much hit her every single time if you need to. But if you're ever doing the Gnar Juggernaut bullcrap that we talked about before, and let's say like you were not able to fast 9, you don't win that many rounds for some reason, maybe other people are high rolling, and you're poor, you're low health, you need a roll at level 8, you can't go level 9, what do you play? You go for Ashe. Build a Kraken Slayer though, play the same Juggernaut frontline bullcrap, and yeah, she's going to be a very solid option as a backup. But obviously, the other versions of the Juggernaut frontline plus random damage dealer are going to be better just because Ashe is a 4-cost and the other units are 5-cost. But hey, 4-costs still have their place in the meta because they're just much cheaper to get. You don't need to go to level 9, so you're literally saving like 50 gold when you go for a 2-star 4-cost compared to a 2-star 5-cost. It's like miles of difference. It might be more than 50 gold. It might be like 100 gold even, but maybe the portal isn't so gold friendly. Maybe you messed up your early game. What do you do when you play that AD line? Well, you just go Ashe instead. Next build up we have is Sniper Varus. Sniper Varus kind of fell out of favor for the full Juggernaut version, but he's still obviously very good. People are just playing him in the 2-sniper version rather the 5-sniper version. Duelist Reroll, very good if you get artifacts, but if you don't get that, or Keeper, if you get Keeper or artifacts, this build is super good. Or if you farm a lot with Gangplank and get a lot of Gangplanks early on to 3-star him really quickly, then you farm infinite gold to 3-star everything. Those are going to be the times you want to be playing Duelist. Apart from that, like probably better comps to go for, but overall very nice still. Next comp up we have is Katarina Reroll. This comp got nerfed a lot But if you get 3-star Katarina early or 2-star Katarina early, you end up dealing a lot of damage to other people, and you pretty much don't lose rounds in the early game if you get her early. But if you're just trying to hard force her and you have like a 1-star Katarina with perfect items, do not go for this comp because you will not be stable enough. You need to only go for this when you actually have items on her and are able to reroll her for 3-star. One thing you can do when you are playing Katarina is play her and then go into the Cassante board later on, because they both use Edge and Knight, they both like Striker's Flail, they both can use Hand of Justice, so the only item you need for your Cassante is Infinity Edge, which you could build later in the game. So if you start the game with Edge and Knight plus like Striker's Flail, you can easily go into a Cassante board. But if you get a lot of Katarinas, definitely just stay with her, and she can carry if you 3-star her early. Later on in the game, you could complement her with Yuumi carry, with Yuumi secondary carry. You could go like Void Staff Morello on Yuumi, and Leona's obviously a solid tank. For Rakan, he could be 3-star if he is. Itemize him. If not, use Leona as your main tank. Pretty simple, straightforward 2-cost reroll comp there. But yeah, in the C tier, we have Luchadors, we have Wraith. I mean, Wraith, it could be playable. It's just weird. And then Darius is pretty bad. Like, most people are doing Kai'Sa carry instead of Darius carry when they play this. But yeah, Mighty Mech, if you go 7 Mech, you might as well just go the Mentor build. It's a lot better. But you just have much better options in the C tier. I probably wouldn't play the C tier, maybe 1 out of 100 games if you're playing that many games in a patch. I'm personally not, but yeah, there are times to play them, but just not in most of your games. Like, stick to the S and A tiers, and then if you get a great start for the B tiers, go for those. But this is how I'm going to be approaching the patch. If you meet the conditions, Crystal Gambit, All Out Cassante, Kayle, Star Guardian, the Crew, Soul Fighter, those are all viable if you either get the Emblem, Trait Augment, Big Econ, things like that. If not, default to AP, Sorcerer and Battle Academia Yuumi, probably the 2 most consistent comps right now that are decently strong. And then for AD, do the Juggernaut nonsense with Gnar, Legendary Backline, Smolder plus Juggernauts, Ashe plus Juggernauts, Sniper plus, like, any of those work. But let me know down in the comments what your favorite comp is for this patch. If you want to learn more about how to actually play TFT, not just knowing what comps to play, check out the Fundamentals of TFT's article on the website or the video. Both are going to be probably one of the more helpful guides in recent years. Before the meta snapshot, bunnymuffins.lol/meta for the full guide, and teamfight.lol for all your data needs. That's going to be it for me today. Hopefully, I'll see you all next time.